Hello everyone, today I want to show you how to make this bezel set macrame cabochon, and then this is what mine looks like here. So I just got this nice oval cabochon and then used a macrame technique to make this kind of bezel shape all around it to capture it. And then this is the back. So it's quite a simple technique to capture a cabochon with macrame here, where you get this bezel effect. In this case I'm just showing you how to do it without making a bail or anything. I've done that in a previous tutorial, because this can then be the basis for other designs that you want to do. So you can add cards onto this after you've done this. That's why I'm just showing you how to do this and get rid of the cards as well. So if you want to learn how to do this, then stay tuned. So then these are the materials that we need. Now first of all, you obviously need whatever cabochon that you're using. I've got this kind of pink coloured, multiple different tones of pink agate cabochon, just an oval shape. And this specific one measures 4 by 4.5 centimeters, but this is really just to show you the technique. It'll work for any size and a lot of different shapes as well, so a teardrop shape will work really nicely as well, and also other shapes. This is just to demonstrate with. And then we also need some cord, and what I'm using here is a 0.9mm S-long cord, just this nice grey colour that will go nicely with the colour of my cabochon. You can really use many different types and sizes of cord for this technique. Again, it's just really to demonstrate with. So let's get it together and let's get going. So we then need to cut some cords ready that we can use. Now first of all, here I have two lengths of my cord of about 40 centimeters each. These are going to be the holding cords, and this is more just of a guideline because it will depend on your cabochon how long these really need to be. But I'd say rather always have too much than too little. So really what you would do is take your cabochon, measure your cord around it to make sure you get all the way around, and then have extra to make sure we can work with it, but also depending on how you want to finish it off. And then as for the working cord, we're going to need a length of about 3.5 meters here, but again that's just the cord that I'm using to accommodate for my materials, so my cabochon. That can be different if you're using a larger or a smaller cabochon. So what I've then done is taken my two holding cords here and attached them to my mini macrame board, just in slots right next to each other, because that, in my opinion, for this cabochon that I'm using here anyway, is going to be the perfect distance that I need between the two. So this is just what I'm working with on the macrame board. It makes it really easy to work with because you obviously have these slots, but you can really use whatever you have at hand. And then just obviously find the distance you need between your two cords. So you do that by taking your cabochon and kind of laying it, or having your cords fastened down, and just the cords need to come a little bit on the outside so you can see a bit of space on each side there, because they need to come around the sides just a little bit to capture it all the way around. Then what we want to do to start out is take our working length of cord here, so the long length, and then I'm just going to start towards one end. I want to just fold it over a little bit at the end here, and on one side just a short little tail, not too much. This is where we're going to be starting out. You want to make sure the short length that we have is pointing upwards, because we're going to be working from the top and then working our way down here. So I'm going to put this underneath the little loop that I've got hold of, and I'm just taking the left one. You can start from either side, it doesn't really matter because we'll be going back and forth anyway. I'm taking the loop underneath, then I want to attach this working cord with a lark's head knot. So I'm going to put my fingers through the loop, back around, grab hold of the tails, and then grab the tails, pull them all the way through. Now obviously, because it's a long length we're working with, especially at the beginning, it's going to be a lot of length to work with every time you have to pull your cord through. But as we keep going, obviously the cord is going to get shorter and shorter, so it'll get easier and easier. So just take your time in doing it. So I've attached this now with a lark's head knot. So what I'm going to do is this short tail, I'm just going to attach this to the top of my macrame board just to help get it out of the way, because we're not going to be using that anymore right now. And then we need to keep working with the very long length here and build up this bezel. So now that we attach the cord, we then need to start the crossing over, basically zigzagging from side to side. So I'm going to take the long length here, and then it's coming from the left and then going naturally over towards the right. So what I want to do is take the cord, bring it underneath the right one, just like that. So basically down between the two and underneath the right one, then back around the side and then back through itself. So it's looping through there. Then we need to pull all the cord through. Just like this. So you have this little knot that we've made. So your cord is coming from the left, underneath the right one, loop back around, and just make sure you remember for it to come through itself, just like that. Because that's basically what creates the knot. And then to tighten this is the kind of fiddliest part of the whole thing, because you want to make sure whenever we tighten knots that we keep an even distance between the two holding cords, so it becomes pretty much as straight as possible working downwards. So like that. You can also just make sure that your holding cords are tightened up so they stay nice and straight. So you have a bit of tension in there. So that's one half of the next knot. Now what we need to do is take the same cord, and we now need to go over the right one instead of coming under. So go over and then go back underneath, then come up between the two, but make sure you come up inside of this cord of itself basically, and then grab the rest, pull it all the way through, just like this. Before I then pull this tight, I just want to make sure the first one is kind of as tight as it can be for now. The beginning part is always the hardest, just to get started before we get into the rhythm properly. And then as you can see here, this is basically the same as the knot we did here, the lark's head knot, but we're just making it using one cord instead of here. We used both ends of the same cord. So it's basically a vertical lark's head knot. So just tighten this. Now you don't want to pull too tight when you tighten up your knots, because what that's going to do is just want to pull the two holding cords closer together. So just try and have a nice even tension there. Make sure whenever you're tightening it, before you move on, that you're happy with the distance between the two knots there. And you can always, once you've tightened it, just pull them out a little bit, just like that. So that's the one side again. So now we need to cross back over to the opposite side, because we're doing this zigzag from side to side. So as you can see, after making this knot, it naturally, the cord wants to go over towards the left again. So I take my cord, go underneath the left one, left holding cord, and then I go around the side, loop back over it, and then through itself. Remember to always go through itself there. That's what creates the knot. And like that. And as you can see, as we pull this all the way up, that's going to lay nicely right below the previous one. Just like that. And obviously before this stays in place fully, we need to complete that knot. So I take the same cord, now I go over the left one, back around and underneath, and up between the two holding cords there, making sure we go on the inside of itself, and then pull the rest of your cord through all the way, just like that. And again, before we tighten this, always make sure to tighten it towards the inside, so towards the middle. Before we do that, I just want to make sure the first one kind of is sitting properly, and then I want to tighten up the second half of the knot, which is then what holds it in place. Just like that. And again, if you feel like whenever you're making a knot that it seems to close up a little bit on the two holding cords, once you've made the knot, just kind of gently pull them apart a little bit. That helps tighten it, but also just opens them up just a little bit to help keep them even throughout. And that's basically all there is to it. So you keep going back and forth like this. Now go back over to the right side again, like I just showed you before, and you build this all the way, this row of knots basically, and it's going to end up being the bezel. So I've now gotten further on here with my work, and then what I just want to do is show you again, and then also give some tips on how to keep this even, because obviously, like I said, you want to try and make sure to keep this as even as possible throughout, with the same distance between the two holding cords there, because what your cord will naturally want to do as you're tightening your knots is they'll want to move a little bit closer to each other, but you want to try and avoid that from happening, so it's nice and even throughout. So I'm just going to show you again. I'm going to take my working cord from the right side, it's where I did the last knot, take it underneath, then back over and through itself, and then I pull it all the way through, And then what I like to do is, when I tighten it on this side, I like to kind of pull it through so I have a loop out here on the outside of the piece that I'm making. And then I push it all the way up. I kind of put my finger right here below the knot prior to that, and then I pull it tight. I don't pull it too tight or too hard, it's just so the cord lies just right there and loops around the holding cord. And then I take my cord again, now I go through from the other side underneath, and then make sure to pull it up through the loop here, and again pull it all the way through. And then again, what I do here before I tighten this is I grab the loop on the outside of the piece, and I make sure the first one is pulled as tight as I want it, because then we need to make this knot to tighten up the other one so it doesn't move, stops moving. But obviously if we just tighten it, it's going to naturally want to pull closer. To avoid that, I'm going to push this up, hold my finger on there, and then just pull the loop closer. So you can see you have the knot, and then just to tighten the knot a bit more, I like to keep hold of my holding cord and then pull it a little bit upwards. And then, like I said previously as well, every time I then make a knot on one side, going from one to the other, I like to just to make sure if it looks like it maybe has closed up a little bit, wanting to move closer, I just gently pull it apart here, and that helps open up the knot and the crossover section basically that you've just done. Just like that. And then go from the side we've just done the knot on over to the opposite side, doing the exact same thing. Bring it underneath from the middle, back around the top and through the loop. Bring all the cord through, and then again we have the loop on the outside. You want to grab the right one so you get a full loop like that. So it sits right, put your finger on it and pull the loop tighter so it sits right underneath the previous knot on that side. Go from the other side of that holding cord underneath, and then pull up through, make sure you get through the loop there of itself. Pull the cord all the way through, and again I grab hold of the loop on the outside here, just using that to pull the first knot that I just did a bit tighter so it sits nicely. You don't want the knots or any parts of the knot to be too loose obviously. Then I put my finger there so it doesn't move around too much, and then tighten it. And there we go. Again, I pull it upwards a little bit, and as you might be able to see here, if I just continue like this, this would want to start singeing in and become narrower and narrower. So to avoid that, once I've done those knots, my last knot, I just pull them apart a little bit to open it up, and that readjusts for that problem. So there we go, just keep doing this until you reach the length that we need. So then now that I've reached the full length that I know I need for my cabochon, what I just want to do is show you how you figure that out. So you want to get your cabochon, and then as you go in and you're making this, when you feel that you're getting close to it being long enough, what I'm going to do is grab a scrap piece of cord here. I'm going to lay this, I'm just laying it flat on a surface, lay it around the outside of the cabochon, and this will be the same for whatever shape of cabochon it is. Then have the ends come together there. Then I have the length. I lay that next to the piece that I'm making to see if it's long enough or if I need to make more. Now this happens to be just perfectly long enough, so I know I've reached the length that I need, but this is then how you want to measure how long a length you need of this in order to make it fit around your cabochon. But then now that I know that I have mine ready here, I can take it off my board again, because I'm done with this work now of making the length that we need to go around the cabochon. So I'm just going to take it off the board. You don't need to worry about taking it off, whatever you're working on, because it's not going to come undone, because obviously we have knots in there. But we need to then be able to do this, take it off to be able to do the next step here. So you're going to find that you have, get it all the way off like that. There we go. You're going to find you then have your two holding cords coming out, two of them here on both ends, and then we have the working cord, we have one tail on each end as well. So then here we have the length, and then this is then going to be kind of the bezel for the cabochon. So it's going to end up folding around, and if I just kind of show you the idea of it, it's going to sit around the outside of the cabochon here, just like that, and then capture it in place. And obviously you have to do it so it's secure, but that's what we're going to do now. And what I personally like to do is you can choose whatever side you want to be pointing outwards, because they do look a bit different. In here you can kind of see all your knots. That for me is the back, that's what I want on the inside. I think this side looks a bit nicer, but like I said, it's completely up to you and your personal preference. So like I said, we have the 2 holding cords on each end and then 1 working cord on each end as well. So to begin with, we're going to start with the holding cords. So make sure the side you want pointing outwards is the one that you make sure is pointing outwards, and the other one is pointing inwards there. Then I'm going to take my 2 holding cords, kind of take your working cords out of the way a little bit, because obviously we have a few cords going on here. Doesn't matter which side you start with, the bottom ones or the top ones, it doesn't matter at all, because obviously it looks the same. But I'm going to take the ones, in this case on the bottom, first of all, bring them together towards the top here, like this. I'm going to just try and take the other ones out of the way. Then I need to tie a knot with these 2. So just tie a regular overhand knot to bring them closer. Make sure that my working cord is nice and tight. And then you can always bring it up. Then what I want to do is actually tighten this a bit. So try and scooch your knots together a little bit. And then here you can see it's going to come together, the 2 sides are going to come together. This is just one side for now. And then I want to try and keep hold of that. What you can just do before is, once we get to this point, it's an idea to just check with your cabochon whether it's going to be the right fit. Because obviously you don't want it to be too small or too big after all. You measured it with the length, but it's an idea to also just measure it here. Because you can still now, if it's not quite right, you can still now go in and add some more knots or take some knots away. So that's just a good idea. So there we go, seems fine. Then I want to kind of just keep hold of that knot, because it's going to want to open up if we don't. I want to then tie another knot on top of that, because obviously the first knot is just going to open back up if we don't do that. So this second one is just to hold the first one in place. So just tie it right on top of that previous one. So we now have a double knot there, and this is now secure, it's not going to open back up. So that's one side done. And you can flip it around, and then we have the 2 holding cords on the other side here. Try and get the other ones out of the way for now. And then this is where we want to place the cabochon in. Doesn't again matter what side you do it to. One is just going to be the back and one is going to be the front. You're just going to have to manipulate this a little bit. Make sure you grab the 2 front ones. And like I said, I'm working with an oval one, but it'll be the same principle regardless what shape you've got here. Whether it's teardrop or what, just make sure the cabochon sits. So the top of the cabochon, whether it's a teardrop or oval here or another shape, that it sits right within. You can still just maneuver it afterwards, but it's easier getting it right from the beginning if you can. So kind of place it in there, mold it a little bit around. And then I want to take the 2 holding cords that we haven't used yet, that are now in my case on the front here, do the exact same thing, tie a knot with them. And then I want to start tightening this and pull it pretty nice and tight, and this is going to then hug around the front of the cabochon, whereas the other one we already tightened up hugs around the back and sits like that. So all we're pretty much trying to do is having this bezel that we made just come in around the edges of the cabochon, both on the front and the back, and that's what's going to hold it in place and keep it in there securely. So pull it nice and tight until you feel like it's going to be nice and secure, and you're going to feel secure enough that the cabochon isn't going to slip out of this setting. So something a bit like that. Again, we need to just hold on to the knot that we've already made and then make a second one to keep that in place. Make sure the first one is tight before you tighten the second one, because obviously then otherwise it's not going to tighten in the right place. So just pull it nice and tight here so we know it's secure. And there we go. That's pretty much the cabochon captured now. So as you can see, I'm holding it by the cords and the cabochon isn't falling out. So like this, it's nice and secure in there. We have this nice bezel, and this is where if you need to, I can still just maneuver it around. If I feel the shape is not 100%, the top of what I want to be the top of the cabochon there, I want to make sure it's sitting properly, just so it looks nice and proportioned and symmetrical. So just something like that. And then all we have left are all the cords at the top here. We then need to deal with those. And to get rid of those and to finish off that, you have a tiny little gap up here, as you can see. That's also what I just want to close up. I'm going to get rid of these by closing that little gap up. Now what you could also do is get rid of some of the cords, and you can make a bail with some of these cords if you want to. So actually make a bail that's attached like this. That's completely up to you. I've done that in a previous tutorial, so you could do that. What I want to show you here is how to get rid of all of them and then have this be a basic. So a basis to start another design from the bezel here that we made. And I'm going to then use that in future tutorials. So this is just to kind of show you the technique. So now what we just need to sort our cords out here. We have the two on each side that created the knots to fasten the bezel. That's these here. And then we have the working cords there. So what I want to start with is actually the working cords. They're kind of naturally wanting to cross over the middle there, as you can see, from each their own side. So I want to work with that, and then I'm just going to take those two working cords that we didn't use to make knots to fasten the bezel yet. I'm going to tie a regular overhand knot so that this knot, when I tighten it, is going to end up lying right there in the middle and basically fill in that gap. Tighten that. Not too tight because obviously you're pulling from the sides, but I want to tighten another one, make another knot, because otherwise the first one is not going to stay in place. Make sure the first one is tight, sitting where you want it to, and then we tighten the second knot. So there we go. That's now secured those in place. What I want to do now, before I then get rid of the other ones, I actually want to get rid of these two cords while I have the space to work with. To do that, I'm going to get out a pair of scissors and I want to cut this. You can just do one at a time if you want to. Cut it down so you have just about 1 millimeter or so left. Then I'm going to take a lighter, because this is a synthetic cord, I can singe the ends. If you're using a natural cord to do this, you're going to have to use glue to glue the knot before you then cut off the excess. But for this, I'm going to take a lighter, and obviously be careful with this because it's a naked flame and it gets hot. But I'm just going to take a lighter, and that very little end that we have left, just singe that down and then just push that in. You can also just use the lighter itself if you don't want to put your finger on it. But if you only have it on there for like a second or two, the lighter, then it doesn't get too hot. But obviously be careful regardless. And this then finishes off the cord, but it also seals it in place, so that knot isn't going to come undone even though we cut this off quite close to it. Because we singed it down here with this method, it seals it in place, so we don't have to worry about it. Same thing with the other one. There we go. So that's those ones finished off. So now we have the other cords left only. And basically I want to do the same with these. So I'm just going to take two of them first of all, bring them across the middle. It's like this, tie a regular knot. And again, if you still have a little bit of gap up here in the connection point between the two sides, you can still then use these knots to fill that in. Tie another knot to secure the first one in place, and then you can get rid of these as well in the exact same way. just make sure it's nice and tight so it doesn't come undone. Get rid of these cords so you have about 1 millimeter or so left. Or like I said, if you're using a natural cord you can't singe, then just use a glue. That's perfectly fine as well. Singe it down and then seal it in place. Same with the other one. Get rid of that one as well. And also by singeing the cords down here, you manage to get a little bit less bulk on the top. Obviously the knots that we're making are adding a little bit of bulk, but by singeing them down we can just press it in a bit so it doesn't look too bad. I'm going to take the last two, do the same thing. Place those cords in the knot exactly where I want them to be, to make it as seamless as possible and least bulky. Another knot to tighten that first one. There we go. And then just the same principle again, get rid of the excess. And seal it in place. The last one, and there we go. We now got rid of all the cords as well. So as you can see, you just have a little bit of bulk there at the top, or what you could always do is swap it around and then have that be the bottom, depending on what you're using this for. But what I also then like to do, and being careful doing this because you don't want the knots to come undone obviously and all your work to come undone because of it, but you can just take, if you're using a synthetic cord, if you're using a glue, you just have to kind of use it the way it is. But at the end here, once I got rid of it all, I like to just go back in on some of it and then just singe a little bit more, just to seal it a bit more in place, but also you can then melt it a little bit more, the actual knots themselves, and then just press it down, and that helps make it just a little bit less bulky. So there we go, that's what it looks like. So that's how you capture a cabochon using this bezel technique. It looks really nice all the way around and it's nice and secure in there. So obviously this one doesn't have anything attached to it at the moment, so I didn't make a bail. Like I said, I have done that in a previous tutorial where you make that was a different kind of bezel where I added beads to it as well. You can do that and then make a bail for this if you want to just have it like this. But for this one I wanted to show this technique and then get rid of the cords, where you can then use this bezel with the cabochon for the basis of other designs that you can then do, because you can attach cords to this. And I'm going to be doing that in future tutorials. So this was just to show you the basics of that, and then I'm going to be, like I said, showing you in other tutorials how you can use this and develop this further. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you very much for watching. Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to wrap a stone or a cabochon with macrame. And this is what I'm going to be showing you, and this is what I call the looping technique. So this is what it looks like on the front and the back. And then I'm going to show you a few different variations to do for the top to attach it to something.